Welcome to Meal Prep Made Easy workshop. My name is Lauren Colston. I'm a registered dietitian serving a variety of clients and patients with nutrition needs, from weight management to sports performance and nutrition to food allergies, diabetes management, and more. I practice in the Lexington, Kentucky area, serving clients and patients all over Kentucky. Today, we're going to be talking about meal prepping made easy. It's something really a topic that some people get really overwhelmed with or confused on how to actually make it happen. So today we're going to be talking about strategies to make it easier for you and to actually do it. So we'll talk about a couple different types of meal prep. That includes ingredient method and recipe method. We'll talk about making a grocery list to make it a successful grocery shopping experience. We'll talk about how to make the food last. And then lastly, what happens when our meal prep plan does not go as planned and we need to eat away from home? What do we do then? So why should we meal plan? Seems like a very straightforward and simple question. Yep, it saves money, helps me stay on my nutrition goals instead of eating out. Those are correct. It more specifically, it goes in line with if it's convenient, then we'll do it. If it's conveniently already cooked at home and ready to go, we're less likely to go out and eat, right? So it's going to reduce that eating out, in turn saving a lot of money. You're going to have a little bit more upfront costs, of course, with these grocery trips that are going to help you prepare for meal planning for the week, but you're not going to be spending upwards of $10 to $12 per meal like you would when you're going out to eat, depending on where you are eating, of course. And then lastly, we're more in control of our cooking methods and ingredients that we use when we meal prep and plan. So that allows you, if you have specific nutrition needs and goals, you're in control of that and you know exactly what's going into your food. So let's talk about the two different types of meal prepping. So first one that we're going to talk about today is going to be that ingredient method. What this means is, instead of the classic thinking about laying out all those containers out on your counter and scooping in your recipe into it, the ingredient method is actually just prepping a couple of components or a couple of our foods that are actually going to go into the full meal. So you're not creating the full meal or the full recipe with the ingredient method. The second type that we'll talk about is going to be that classic recipe method, where you're choosing 2 to 3 recipes for the week. You're preparing that full recipe ahead of time, and then you're putting those in those containers for the week, ready to go 100%. All it needs to do is be reheated. So let's talk more about the ingredient method. What does this actually look like and mean? So when I talk about components of foods or just certain ingredients that we're prepping, I want you to think about our plate method here. So this includes all of our food groups. And this visual here will help you pick out which ingredients are going to be easiest and more realistic for you to prep ahead of time. So we've got our fruits, our non-starchy vegetables, protein, whole grains, complex carbs. The complex carbs are going to include your starchy vegetables, beans and legumes, your rice, your quinoa, things like that. And then we have our dairy or dairy substitutes. So think about these food groups as you're choosing, okay, what ingredients am I going to prep for the week? So for example, I love this layout because if we look left to right, it shows us the full recipe if we were to put all these things together. But let's say I'm going to choose my grain to prep ahead of time for the week. So if you start over here on the left, I chose to batch cook a bunch of quinoa, and I went ahead and sliced up some bell pepper and onions and cooked those as well. Those two ingredients I've completed. They're done cooking, and I chose those because they most likely are going to take the longest of the rest of these things that are going to go in this dish. So if you do the quinoa and the bell pepper and onions early on in the week, all that means when you're ready to go and eat this meal, what you've got to do is heat up those black beans from the can, you add some cheese, you slice up some avocado, and you're ready to go. So left to right, that completes that full meal. But let's think about, okay, if we are somebody who gets burnout on recipes really easily, this is another reason why the ingredient method is going to serve you a lot better. Because with quinoa, if we batch cook that, we can do some different types of recipes and flavors just from prepping a couple of ingredients ahead of time. So let's still use our quinoa that we batch cooked. We went ahead and sliced up some tomatoes and cucumbers at the beginning of the week. And then all we would need to do is add that chicken or chickpeas for our protein, yogurt sauce or tzatziki, which is my favorite for Mediterranean dish, and a little bit of olive oil. We're throwing this all in a pan and we're heating it up, ready to go. So this would be more like a Mediterranean style. That first example is more like a Mexican style dish. And then this third example here, still using that quinoa. We've got some kale and sweet potato that we prepped early on. Those two are definitely going to be things that take a little bit longer, so prepping them ahead of time would be to your advantage. Then we cook some egg when we're ready to eat it so it's fresh. We add a little bit of sauce and bam, we are good to go. So this is my favorite method. This is the method that I teach a lot of my clients to use because it's a lot more realistic for people to stick with when they have a couple of components prepped ahead of time and they don't get into recipe rut and burnout. So let's talk about the recipe method because some of you definitely will benefit from this. Maybe you're somebody who is like, yes, I could eat the exact same thing 5 nights a week and for lunch 5 days a week, and I am good to go. This is going to be the method for you. So what I recommend is looking for those 2 to 3 recipes, which is a good place to start for the week. And we have to figure out where we're going to find those recipes. So these are just some of my favorite places. Eat Love is a software app that I offer to my clients and patients. So if you need more information on that or would like to see a demo of that, you can always reach out to me via email. Skinny Taste is a free website. You can look for recipes there. She also has her recipes divided down by ingredients. So if you wanted to batch cook chicken, you could click on chicken, look at all the recipes from there, and use the ingredient method from her site as well. Fed and Fit, she has some on her blog, but she's more popular for her cookbook. You'll see here on the right, which is Cook Once, Eat All Week. Love and Zest is a fantastic blog. Meals That Heal is one of my absolute favorite cookbooks. This is one that I go back to time and time again. Skinny Taste, of course, has recipe books as well, cookbooks, and those are also some of my favorites. But check these out if you need a place to find some healthy recipes to choose from. So if you're using the recipe method, it's a good idea to think about the week ahead of time. Let's say you've got a work luncheon coming up on Wednesday and someone's birthday party on Thursday night. Well, you know for sure that you're going to be eating out for those 2 meals, or maybe it's more. Start from that right there, what you know ahead of time about your week. That way we can choose recipes or our meals that are going to be realistic to pack or eat from our meal prepping at home. And that's going to help prevent some food waste. Instead of saying, okay, I'm going to prep 5 lunches, 5 dinners, and 5 breakfasts, and then you end up only eating half of those, that's going to leave a lot of waste in your fridge. So think about your week ahead of time, lay it out like this. And if you look in that bottom right square there, that gives you a good idea of when you go into your grocery shopping list, how to lay that out and how much food to buy. So now let's talking about making that grocery list. So some of you may have that running list on your fridge that as soon as you realize you're out of something, you go over and write it. For the others of us, we realize, oh, I need to go to the grocery today. Now let's start that grocery list. Whichever group you fall in, this is a strategy that I like to use. Think about that plate method again. Think about our food groups. What do we need from each group? And then simply list it out underneath. This helps separate it. That way, as you're going into the grocery store, you're not missing something. If you've got bread listed as item number 1 and English muffins listed as item 20 on your list, you're going to be running all over the grocery store. But if you can break it up into these food groups, or even if you shop at a grocery store that you know really well in terms of sections, split it up like that, and that will make your shopping experience much, much better and less likely to be running all around the store and still forgetting items. All right, so let's talk about making our food last. So the best advice I have for this is have those canned and frozen foods that you can always fall back on. Canned and frozen foods kind of get a bad reputation, but they are truly healthy staples to keep on hand, especially if we notice that our fresh produce and other foods go badly really quickly, especially if you're cooking for just 1 or 2 people. You're not going to want to load up on 100% fresh produce. So this is where canned and frozen foods can be to your benefit. For the canned foods, what I recommend is rinsing and draining them off to get some of that extra sodium that we can find in the canned foods. And then frozen, make sure you're buying just plain vegetables, plain fresh frozen fruits. That way you're not getting them covered in sugar or sauces, extra sodium. You want to be in control of those cooking methods and ingredients. So just get it as plain as you can. These are just an example of some foods with a longer shelf life. And so these you can definitely include in all kinds of recipes in very different ways. Some additional things that you can do is store your fruits and vegetables in a crisper drawer. So for your apples, instead of sitting them out on the counter next to your bananas, that actually is going to cause both of those fruits to ripen much faster because of the gases that they put off. Store those apples in the fridge, put the bananas on the counter by themselves. If you're buying a bag of spinach, you open it up and you're not using it all at once. Take that spinach out, put it in a fresh Ziploc bag with a paper towel to help absorb some of that extra moisture. Small things like that can really go a long way. If you're wanting to do the ice tray hack, you can search different combos on Google for this. For example, you could take a little bit of tomato paste, put in a little bit of herbs in an ice tray, freeze it, and that way when you're ready to cook a soup or you need a base for something, you're pulling it out and you've got some herbs ready to go and you're not wasting tomato paste. If you're like me, and you can easily open up a can of tomato paste and only use a tablespoon and forget you have the rest in the fridge. Shelf life of foods before and after prepping. If it looks weird, smells weird, don't eat it. So typically about a week after prepping your food and storing it in the fridge is a good timeline to have it and be able to eat it. If it's much longer than that, just take a look at it, smell it, trust your gut on this. Don't eat anything that looks suspicious. All right, so let's talk about when we're going out to eat, because one, we plan for it ahead of time, kind of like we talked about back in the planning out your week, or things just don't go as planned. So my first piece of advice is come prepared. If you're going to a restaurant, most places have their menus online. Look ahead of time, see what you can order. That's going to be a smart choice. If you decide ahead of time before you get there, you don't need to look at the menu again when you get there. Okay, you've already decided on it. Come prepared with that. When you are looking at the menu, look for buzzwords. So the titles of some recipes or dishes will tell you a lot about what's in it. So if it's smothered and covered and I don't know what else, all kinds of funky words that the marketing likes to get us on, those are probably not going to be your best choice for healthy options. Look for grilled, steamed, things like that. So look for the buzzwords. Fill up on vegetables. So this is an option that nearly almost every restaurant, even places now, have a vegetable option, whether it's a side salad or steamed vegetables. Look for those and definitely add those where you can. Watch your portion sizes. So typically at restaurants, that portion size is much bigger than what we would actually eat if we were at home. So if you know that it's a larger portion, for example, like the Mexican restaurants that tend to be much, much larger, or an Italian restaurant, take a box when you first get that plate of food, split it in half, put it away, and now it's out of sight, out of mind. If you're just going to leave it there in front of you on that plate, you're going to be more likely to just eat that whole portion because it's right there, it looks good. You know, we get carried away socializing. Before we know it, we've eaten way more food than we would if we were at home. And then lastly, if you have specific questions about a dish or, need recommendations, ask your server. They're more than happy to help you, and if they can't help you, they'll find somebody that can and can answer your questions. Couple of announcements before we go. I do have a macro coaching group starting in October, so if you are interested in this and would like to get on the wait list, send me an email to laurencolstonnutrition@gmail.com. And then if you're interested in that Eat Love Meal Planning app, that's just a little snippet picture there. Also send me an email to laurencolstonnutrition@gmail.com and we can set up a time to chat about that. But that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for tuning in to Meal Prepping Made Easy. I would love to see what you're cooking in your kitchen. You can tag me on Instagram, dietitian_Lauren C, or find me on Facebook, Body Fit Nutrition LLC, Lauren Colston. Hope you all have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.